Hello. I wanted to speak to you about a branch of mediumship which is often shrouded in great mystery, and that is physical mediumship and its associated phenomena. And it is something that, certainly for the public is almost unheard of these days. We hear of some physical mediums working up and down the country, some internationally, of course. And there's some interesting debates that go all around, all that happens in these events. And I'm not really here to talk about that, and I'm certainly not here to talk about anybody else's mediumship. Let's make that very clear. But I have over the years experienced some wonderful phenomena myself. And it may not always come in the way that people expect. There's over the years, and I say over the years, over many, many years, there's been seance environments that have been created in people's homes, and then oftentimes that phenomena has gone to the spiritualist church and further. And I've read some wonderful books on the subject, Two Worlds of Helen Duncan. I probably read that, 20 times. Voices in the Dark by Leslie Flint was one of my great favourites. Again, I don't know of the validity of that mediumship, because I certainly wasn't there. It was well before my time, but the stories were beautifully written, and how people would have marvellous communion with spirits through the mediumship of some very well-known mediums, long gone, but well-known mediums. And other mediums, I'm sure one was called Materialization by Harry Boddington. I'll stand to be corrected on that, but that's how at least I remember it. And another wonderful book by Louis Harris, or Louis Harrison, and it was about her husband's mediumship. And the book, I'm sure, was entitled They Walked Among Us. And so I've read these books. I read them all pretty much first time round in my teenage years, and then after a period of years I'd revisit them. So, but either way, it sparked an interest, certainly. I was one of the first to attend what was called a Noah's Ark seminar on physical mediumship. I don't know when it was, maybe back in the early 1990s. And we went to, I think from, again, memory, it was their first seminar in Leicester, with myself and people I was sitting for physical mediumship with at that time, and heard marvellous speakers. There was Robin Foy, who I'm sure still speaks, George Cranley, and I did hear that maybe he'd passed, but if he hasn't, apologies, but I think he had, someone mentioned. And there was a wonderful speaker called Alan Crosley. And Alan Crosley had sat with physical mediums for years. And his stories of the things that he had encountered were mesmerizing. And when I say a simple man, I mean that with the greatest respect. He just was a very humble, easygoing, like us, like everybody else, a normal person in this field, as normal as we are. And he would speak of wonderful things. And the story you may have heard me relay before, but I'll repeat it because it's true. And many of you haven't heard the story, but I won't take more than a moment or two to create. But Alan Crosley told us of a medium called Mrs. Gunning. And apparently she'd lived in the Leigh-on-Sea area, Southend, that kind of area, Essex. But that's very much where I'm from. And only a throw really from where I live now. So my ears, picked up, and I was interested in what was this Mrs. Gunning and what was she all about. And she'd gained a reputation of being called the flower and fruit medium, or the flowers and fruits medium. And he would tell this story, and it was along the lines of she would give a seance in the pitch black dark. The control, the spirit control, would then say lights up, lights off, etc. And when the lights went on, it turned out that fruit and flowers would be gifted from the other world as apports, things brought from somewhere else and manifest in this room. And they would be as gifts, you see, for those assembled. And I don't know if it's true. I don't know. But that's the story. And the story continued that she demonstrated her mediumship through the war years, the Great War years, here in the UK, from 1939 to 1945. She would receive these gifts of fruit and flowers, and then they would donate some of these gifts to the local hospital, where people, hadn't seen a kiwi and I don't know what it might be, pineapple, bananas for years. But apparently, so wonderful were these gifts that she was investigated for black market racketeering. Is that the right phrase? But either way, she was investigated as, somebody who was receiving black market goods when everyone else was being heavily rationed. So that would be an interesting an account to investigate. I've been meaning to investigate if it's actually true for years, and never truly had either time or the inclination. But an interesting story nonetheless. So Alan Crosley at the Noah's Ark seminar, spoke of Mrs. Gunning, the flower and fruit medium, and I thought, wow, that sounds amazing. So around that time, I was asked to give a demonstration of mediumship as part of a service. So, you'd have to speak with your audience first of something inspirational. And I was invited to go to Southend-on-Sea to a spiritualist church there called St. Matthew's. And I went along and thought, my word, what can I tell the group of some interest? And I started to relay the story of Mrs. Gunning. She was local, Did people remember her? And I remember a few people saying, I know that lady, or we knew that lady. And so I recounted. All that I've recounted, I recounted to them. I was very young at the time, whether I was, I don't know, in my teenage years or probably early 20s maybe. And as I was finishing my chat, people started to point and get rather animated and quite excited. And I thought, why, God, what's going on? And someone said, look behind you. Well, you can imagine, I didn't much fancy that. But I did look behind me, and behind me there was a big bouquet of flowers, either artificial or fresh, I can't remember, in a big vase behind me. It's a church platform set up. And as I looked round, I saw those flowers in midair. I saw those flowers being dropped back, but slowly moved back into that vase by unseen forces, unseen hands. And I saw each of them move in a most peculiar, ethereal way. I saw that. And I remember looking to the group and saying, I think Mrs. Gunning is here. She must approve. And it may seem like a long way of just giving a story, but it was a true story. I mean, how true do you need it to be? It was an actual thing. We spoke about the flower and fruit medium, Mrs. Gunning. Then towards the end of that conversation, I was to look around, and there they were. The flowers were out of the vase. Now, don't consider it was a gust of wind and they all moved a bit. It's not what I'm telling you. These flowers were out of the vase in midair, being lowered. That's a better word, isn't it? Being lowered back into that vase as they shimmered. Always even nicer. And they shimmered for a moment. And I've never forgotten that experience, or of course Alan Crosley. I'm sure he must have passed years ago. And his innocence and joy of recounting experiences that he had. And so I'm using that really as, I don't know, an experience I can share with you. And I have many others of real phenomena that defies logic. No question. Phenomena, phenomena, phenomena. And the other story I often recount, because again, it's very true. It was some years ago, maybe, I don't know, maybe, oh, God, I'm getting so old these days, who knows? It could be 20 years ago, truly, by now. And I was working at the College of Psychic Studies in South Kensington in London. And I had a group, Day of Phenomena, for a group of maybe, I don't know, 40 people. And one of the experiences or exercises we created that day was table phenomena. Now, I know some of you have done table phenomena. You either love it or hate it. And that's the thing about table phenomena, is usually big reactions. I love it, I hate it. There's very few people in between. Anyway, there was a very big dining room table in that room. Grand room, wooden floors, high ceilings, big dining room table. So what's better? Everybody, let's get around, as many people we could fit with just fingertips on a dining room table top. Now, for those of you who have no idea where this is going, the idea is that you touch the table, you invoke the spirit, and you say, friends, 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 come close to us now, and shift and move this table, wrap this table as an indication you are with us and in this room. It's not as scary as it sounds, I promise you. And the table moved. People had their fingertips on it. Now, a skeptical person, even a cynical person, might say, people move the table. I get that too. So the idea was, when the table got moving, I would tap people off the table. So it left maybe 10 people with their fingertips upon the table. And then as I tapped them again, or with instructions, I would say, only have one hand on the table now, only one hand. And yet the table, it moved fast at this point. And I thought, this is going marvelously. So there was a guy in that group, and I absolutely remember it for a fact, and we asked him to stand and get up on that table, and then to be joined by another. And so you've got human weight on that table. So the table moved, and it moved with glee. It moved with such power and energy and gusto. Then I tapped them again and said, only one finger each, one finger per person. And it was literally one fingertip per person. And then I tapped other people's shoulders and asked them to come away from the table, off the table, away from the table, off the table, until it left. And anyone that actually was there on that day, you'll testify to this, please. It's a true thing. It left only 2 people. One guy was an Irish guy. I can't remember his name. So if you're listening, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. But one man with one fingertip, and one lady, Margaret. She used to be in my circle group. She was a nurse, a very nice lady. And she had one fingertip each. So there's a total of 2 fingertips on either end of a big dining room table with human weight upon it. That table moved at speed like a white knuckle ride. And it was phenomenal. It was phenomenal because, and I say phenomenal quite simply because there's no way you could duplicate that movement and that shift with that weight with one lady and one man with one fingertip each. That's all they had upon that table. And seeing that was mind-blowing. It certainly was. And the most phenomenal thing, well, probably not the most, but another factor of this, I tapped the Irish guy away. Left one lady, Margaret. And that table still moved for a while until she realised that she was the only person supporting the spirit world with one fingertip. But it had still moved with one fingertip. So that to me is a little story. You know, you might be thinking, is it true or false? But it's a story, and it's my true story. But in that story, it proved to me that in broad daylight, windows open, that phenomena of something certainly shifted and moved in that day. So where is this going? I would say to us here that there is a phenomena, a power that's available to us in everyday circumstances. Those of you that demonstrate, invite the phenomena into the space, whether it be a smell, a perfume that comes into the room, a click in the air that all hear, the presence, the almost tangible physical presence of spirits gathering close in this space. Maybe as we look upon the medium's face, an energetic transfiguration, there's something that is beyond the everyday, beyond our human experience. And why would we want that? Because I think so many people seek us out, looking desperately for a truth in something that we can all experience, that defies logic. And I think that's such a huge thing to consider at the moment. Hear how valid, genuine, spontaneous phenomena, if it was allowed back into the work, expected, without command, but with a gentle acceptance of, wow, friends, wouldn't it be wonderful, beyond the healing or the message, that there was an atmospheric change, a breath, a knock, a change in temperature, a movement of something that was in no way meant to be scary or silly or theatrical, just a step nearer to saying, friends, we are in fact nearer than you recognize at this time. For I do believe the spirit world exists just here. They're not up or down or away from us, but just here. And to perceive them, it takes just a change in consciousness. And for some, good phenomena could be the shift in consciousness that they may need to recognize the validity of survival and those who dwell in that other world. I thought I'd share it, and I hope it made some sense. I'm going to create another little video soon before I get back on the road. That's why I've done so many videos, oh my God, until I go travelling again, and I'll be looking at the healing and the power of healing for those of you with interest. Okay, thanks for listening to me. God bless.